It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. These were the words Charles Dickens, written in 1859, but he was talking about what was happening in the 1780s in the cities of London and Paris. What was happening was the French Revolution. People were literally losing their heads. But it wasn't just happening in France. The ancestors of our friends at CustomerGauge were throwing tea into the harbor in Boston. And around the world, there was socio-economic and political turmoil. The reason why this was because we were moving from what was an agrarian economy to the early stages of the Industrial Revolution. Ever since, when you have seen major disruption in our societies around the world, there has been one massive socio-economic shift that has actually been the cause of that. My argument to you is that that's where we are today. We are moving from one economic period into a new economic period, and it may well be that the rules are changing. How do we know this is happening? Little bit of news this morning. When this is happening, people build walls, literally, metaphorically, and physically. When people see fundamental change and they look at the world that they know and the world that they can associate with, there's a human tendency to want to go back and to actually look back at what they know, because the fear of what is happening in the future is difficult to comprehend. And so you start to see these particular symptoms that are actually happening. So when we look at wars and Brexits and all these things that are actually happening, these are not the causes of turmoil. These are the symptoms of turmoil. So, what is this new age that we are entering into? Where we have been has been, since the last war, an age where we figured out how to create mass production of consumer goods and services around the world. Typified probably by Toyota, the Toyota production system, the TPS, that was the birth of lean methodology, where we figured out how we could harness all of the resources we had around the world, and we built systems and processes to be able to globalize and be able to ensure that we could deliver these goods and services to everybody around the world as quickly, as efficiently, and as cheaply as possible. For those of you involved in technology, these were our golden years, because to be able to produce these systems and processes, you needed technology, you needed IT to be able to actually drive that. And the whole IT industry really grew up as a direct result of trying to help organizations become efficient, to save time, to save money, and be able to deliver goods and services to folks around the world. Toyota is an interesting case study. We recently helped Toyota move from their North American headquarters from California to Dallas, Texas. The reason they did this was because they could not compete for the talent that they needed to reposition Toyota for the future, because they were competing with the folks in Silicon Valley. If you ask Toyota today who they believe is their biggest competitor, they will not say that it is Ford or it is General Motors or Nissan. They will say it is Google, it is Uber. What is the point in trying to actually produce a motor vehicle as quickly as possible, as cheaply as possible, and get it to market as quickly as possible when people might not be buying cars anymore in the future? When you ask Toyota, what business are you in? They say, we're in the business of really getting people from A to B as quickly as possible, as safe as possible, with the greatest experience. They're in the experience business, not the motor car business. But what we do still today is we still use those old measurements of time and speed and money and cost to measure how our businesses are performing. Maybe we need to think differently. In the age of AI, where a lot of the tasks that we are used to doing and a lot of the processing that we do, which requires human intervention with systems and processes, AI is going to automate a lot of that and actually probably do a better job than we are actually doing of it. Just a case in point, I had an email from a young lady called Cortana. Cortana reminded me that I had a meeting with my boss, the CEO. She said, Julian, you had a meeting with your boss. You promised you were going to do this, and I noticed that you haven't actually done it. Just a reminder. That is the world of AI, and we need to get used to it. This is something else we're going to have to get used to. If you listen to the World Economic Forum, and whether you believe their predictions or not, the fact is that by the year 2030, what they are saying is it is possible that 50% of the world's biggest companies, the Fortune 500 companies in the world, by 2030 will not be there in the Fortune 500. What they also say is that 50% of the jobs that we are currently doing today around the world might disappear too. 50% in 10 years' time. When we talked about the Industrial Revolution in the 18th century to where we've got to today, it happened over many decades, over many centuries. We're now talking about shifts in economics that are happening in 5, 10 years. We cannot afford just to sit back and watch what other people are actually doing and then just catch up with them when we're ready. We have to start preparing ourselves to what is going to be a very disruptive age, but one that has significant and massive opportunity. Just so you know what we do, this is an example of some work we've done with Amazon Spheres in Seattle. It's a biosphere of customer experience and a modern workplace environment. And so what we do is we help organizations tell their stories through immersive technology to customers and also to their employees as well. But that's the last thing I'm going to say about what I do. The reason I wanted to show this is just say, from my experience of working with organizations around the world, I want to share with you a few little observations and things that I think all of us can actually be doing to prepare ourselves and our businesses and our people for what this disruption is likely to be and how we are going to win through that. I don't know about you, but when I listen to music, which I tend to do quite a lot, I travel a lot, I listen to music, it's Spotify on my iPhone. A few years ago, this device suddenly appeared, and I was like, we're going back in time. Goodness me, what's happening? The old vinyl record player is one of the most popular items that you can actually buy on Amazon.com. But it's not old fogies like me that are actually buying it. Do you know who's actually buying these things? It's millennials. My children went out and bought this one right away and then went and bought vinyl records. One of the symptoms as I mentioned earlier, of fundamental shifts is that the human condition is that we tend to be very retrospective. We like, when we see these things are actually happening, to actually experience the way things were before. So my argument to you, and this is a good thing, by the way, my argument to you is that whilst this is actually happening and we're lurching into this age of AI and all this disruption, perhaps we need to feed that desire that we all have as customers and as people to just reassure ourselves that maybe going backwards might be appropriate before we go forwards. It's a human condition that we have, is that if we don't know what the future holds, we want to at least base ourselves on what we've known before. And my argument to you, that's okay. We are going to go forwards and we're going to venture into this new world, but some of the values that we've actually had for many years and many hundreds of years beforehand are probably those that we still need to base the experience that we provide to our customers as well, to our employees as well. Let me give you an example. This is A.E. Bilston. This is a hardware store in the little town of Uppingham in Rutland in England. A.E. Bilston was my grandfather. He started the business in 1927, and my uncle still runs that business today. When a customer would walk in the door of Bilston's, my grandfather and my uncle would recognize them straight away. They would know who they were. They knew what they had bought last week, and they had a pretty good idea of what they were actually going to buy when they walked through the door. As a direct result of that knowledge, they had a pretty good opportunity to recommend things that they might need that they probably hadn't realized that was available. And it wasn't as if it was just soap and screws and things like that. My grandfather was a visionary with technology, and after the Second World War was the first retailer for televisions and had people from 50 miles around come to see the very first television. He became the hub of everything that people needed when they needed it, as well as the opportunity to experience new technology. And if they were to buy something that was very large and they couldn't actually take it away from them, there again, he would deliver it to their door the very next day, or even the same day. Does that sound familiar to you? I believe my grandfather was the originator of Amazon. And the point I'm trying to make is that Amazon is not a website. Amazon is not a way that you actually transact as quickly as possible. Amazon truly understands the value of customer relationships. It understands the knowledge that it has about who I am, what I buy, what I'm likely to buy. And I certainly know myself, I am a very, very loyal customer of Amazon, as many of you might be too. So I think Amazon bases its value proposition more on the values of the past by mixing it with technology to the future. We need to remember that and ensure that we don't fall into the trap when faced with this disruption of new technologies and we forget about the fundamentals of that human relationship. What's your name?
Wendy.
Wendy. What's your second name, Wendy?
I don't have a second name.
Just Wendy?
Yes.
Okay. Can I ask somebody else? What's your name?
My name's Adam.
Adam. What's your second name, Adam?
Durrell.
Adam Durrell. You'll know why I had to ask Adam now for a moment. I believe that the two most powerful words in the world are Adam Durrell. I also believe the most powerful word in the world is Wendy. It could be Julian. The point I'm trying to make is that when the world interacts with me, if they use my name and they demonstrate the fact that they know who I am, that connection that I actually have is incredibly powerful. You know this, you're all marketeers, you know the personalization and how important that is in getting a message across. But that's not the point I'm trying to make. When we're trying to figure out in the B2B environment of how we're going to actually help ourselves and our customers move into this new age, we tend to think about organizational change and how we can actually show return on investment to the organization. My argument to you is that we now need to also think about the individual and what it means for them and how they can navigate this new world and how we can help them to overcome this in their personal and professional life, not just the organizational return on investment. Two most powerful words. Why? 50% of businesses might not be around, 50% of jobs might not be around. So a lot of people are actually saying, what's in it for me? How can you help me understand what's going on? How can you enable me to position myself and grow and learn and adapt in how I can actually move forward? For the marketeers in the room, do you like seeing empty shelves? It might indicate that you've produced all these wonderful products and they've flown off the shelf and everyone's bought them. One of the things that I've learned in my experience with a lot of businesses, a lot of them are technology businesses, is when we build experience centers and innovation centers for them, they have a tendency to want to sell their products. It's like, this is great. We've built this great big place where we can put all the products and services we have and we bring the customers in and we take them on a tour so they can actually be hands-on with all our products and services. I am going to encourage you, whether you are a business that is selling to your customers or you're helping a business to sell to their customers, take the products off the shelf. The products are not what matters anymore. What customers are actually looking for, they're looking for a partnership with other businesses on how we can navigate the future together and to actually explore things that actually haven't gone before. You can give the greatest gift to your customers by actually helping them to focus on change and the opportunities that actually exist, not on the products and services that you actually have to sell them right now. Because if your products and services are good, and you're evolving them and you're making them relevant, your customers will buy your products and services. They don't need to see them in minute detail every single time you have a conversation. Take the products off the shelf. Have you noticed how I use pictures? You're supposed to now say, that's the Challenger. Let me talk about Challenger for a minute. There's an organization called CEB, used to be part of Gartner, that actually is separated out now. It's actually called Challenger Inc. And many of you probably know a little bit about it. Some of you might know a lot about it. What Challenger have done is they've actually used research from 200,000 salespeople and marketeers of complex solutions to a B2B audience. And they've started to look at the behaviors of how people interact with their customers, both at a marketing and a sales level. And they've created certain profiles, certainly of salespeople, but they've also done profiling in the marketing world as well. And what they've done is they've actually analyzed who are the most effective, successful profiles and who are the least successful. Do you know who the least successful profile is? It is the profile we've been working for so many years to create in our businesses. It is the relationship salesperson. The least successful. Why? Because the relationship salesperson says, hello, Mr. Customer. Tell me what you want. I will listen to what you want, and I will deliver exactly what you're looking for. And whatever you want, I will deliver to you, and I'll make sure you get it as quickly as possible, and whatever resource you actually need, I will make available to you. The research now shows that customers are doing that for themselves. 60% of the sales process is now being done by the educated customer before a salesperson even gets in the door. Why? Because of Amazon.com. Every piece of information a customer needs to know about your business, needs to know about your products and your services, they're already researching. They've got a pretty good idea about what it is they're actually looking for. And the reason you are coming into the door is because they've decided you're somebody that could be a solution provider for what they're actually looking for. You do not need to go in there and ask them lots of questions about what they're looking for and then placate them by doing that. The most successful salesperson profile is the challenger. The challenger is somebody that tells the customer something they don't already know, providing powerful insight of what is actually happening in the market, happening with other customers, and actually presenting this information backed up by research and data that helps the customer to explore new opportunities for things that they hadn't actually thought about, and is assertive enough to try and disrupt the way that the customer was actually planning to deploy or buy products and services by getting them to think differently. So the data tells us this is not theory, this is truth. The challenger, both from a sales and marketing process, by bringing powerful insights backed up with research that leads to effective solutions that changes the status quo, is where we need to go. Something else that we've discovered with customers: insights are great. Powerful data that backs it up is fantastic. What customers tend to say is, well, I like it, I understand it, I can understand the concept. But to be sure, before we actually fully commit, I need to do a pilot. I need to experiment. I need to be able to figure out whether this is the right thing to do. So one of the other things that we need to actually do for our customers is create an environment and to create a condition where we can help them to experiment with the new stuff. Because they can't necessarily just say, okay, you're right, I get it. I want to do this stuff, but if I try to do it in my own environment, it may be really difficult. So help me. So if you can figure out ways that you can enable your customers to experiment with the new stuff and do it in a relatively low-risk way that helps them to learn before they actually buy and adopt and deploy, then you've provided a very valuable service to that customer that they will keep on coming back to you time and time again, and the relationship seller from your competition is going to be standing outside the door with his brochure of products and services, and he's going to be completely ignored. So another lesson for all of you: help your customers to experiment. Make it risk-free or minimal risk, and charge them for it. Do not give it away for free. I've learned from Adam that customer experience programs, many of the very well-intended ones that have actually been deployed for all the right reasons, with all the right science behind it, sometimes have not necessarily been as successful as everyone hoped. Why is that? Is that true? No, they're all perfect. Every time we engage in customer experience, it works. Every time we get all the results we're actually looking for. Well, let me offer a potential answer. We talked about walls and we talked about silos previously. And often when you are trying to implement change in an organization and change perspective and try and do things new, often those silos in an organization get in the way of making change happen. And I'll give you an example. So we as a business have partnered with an iconic furniture company called Herman Miller. Herman Miller produce a lot of furniture and furnishings for modern workplace environments. And the idea is that basically when you're building a new office, you should really have this beautiful environment that is supporting your culture and enabling you to actually create beautiful space that engages your employees and have the technology that we do that actually enables them to work effectively and collaborate. In theory, it sounds really cool because we're designing together, we're delivering together, and it should be a better solution than the old way. The problem we found is silos. Because the people that actually own the building and the space and the furniture are a completely different group of people that actually own and operate the technology. And guess what? They don't talk to each other. And so when you're actually trying to build what should be a beautiful space with technology integrated into it, you end up with the building happening first and the technology happening second. I think there's a lot of CX programs that happen like that. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe marketing think this is really cool that we're doing this and we're doing all these wonderful things, and the sales department says, yeah, whatever. But unless you actually join these things together and you have an integrated approach, maybe it's not going to deliver the result you have. So the message behind my story here, we have to learn to collaborate. We have to break down those silos. We have to get rid of some of that thinking, which is about, that's the old way we've done it, and we've always done it that way. And we now have to kind of come together as teams right at the beginning of the concept and actually start to figure out how we're actually going to make change happen as quickly and as effectively as possible. And that means adopting new things, but it also means throwing away old things. For every new thing you adopt, please take an old thing and throw it out the window. Collaboration should not just happen inside your company. The reason why we're in this age as we are right now is that we have huge diversity and creativity available to us all around the world. Those businesses that are actually making strides and moving forward in the fintech market, in biosciences, these are all nimble organizations that collaborate with partners, with suppliers, with different organizations outside of their knowledge base, and actually can come up and think up new ways of doing things faster, more agile, and more effectively than the big monolithic companies with silos. We need to learn to collaborate. And we need to make sure that collaboration is effective, and we also need to make sure that it becomes a democracy. Collaboration isn't the most important person in the room, or the most important person who thinks he's the most important person in the room, dominating the conversation and driving everything. It could well be the most junior person in the room from a totally different background has the stellar idea that it's going to change the fortune of that organization. We have to learn to collaborate. Monetization. You're here for Monetize 2019. At some point, we are going to have to measure. And as I said to you earlier, I believe that time and speed and efficiency are not necessarily the measures that we can just focus on right now. Maybe we have to bring in new measures. So I'm just sharing with you, as you can see, this is a back of a napkin formula that I actually wrote. And I was trying to actually figure out how I could actually provide a return on investment in collaboration technology globally for an organization. And what I realized was that, yes, value, V, would be the time that we were giving back to an organization, or the time, that's the T, the time that an organization could either speed up their deployment or save time that enabled them to use it with other things. And yes, there was cost, because everything is regulated by C underneath. But then I had a force multiplier that I put in there. I say, wouldn't it be really different if I actually put an experience force multiplier? In other words, the experience you actually have while you're doing this process, if it is a really, really good experience, can actually accelerate the value that you have. Or alternatively, if it's a really bad experience, it would actually cause massive damage to the value you actually have. And again, I don't expect you to take this formula and do anything with it. I'm just trying to say you can find your own formulas. You have to be able to come up with formulas. You have to experiment with them. You have to think differently from the age-old terminology of I can save the customer money, I can speed up how they get to market, I can make them more efficient than they were. Efficiency doesn't mean anything anymore when people are being different. So, it could be the best of times. It could be the worst of times. The one thing that I can absolutely guarantee you is that the only person who can decide the outcome is you. And you have to make a decision whether you want to be better and more efficient or whether you're going to be different. And ladies and gentlemen, I shall finish up by saying that different is the new better. Thank you.